Hi, I'm GM Matthew Sadler.
And I'm WIM Natasha Regan. Welcome to this game from DivP in TCEC 18. And in this game, Leela is white in a French defence against Ethereal. Leela plays a slightly unusual and mysterious move, 9a3, and delays castling. And also plays 10h4, again delaying castling. Leela decides it needs to castle queenside, and we get white attacking on the kingside and black attacking on the queenside. And Leela characteristically pushes its pawn up to h6. What it manages to do is close the kingside using the h6 pawn, and then is able to redeploy all its pieces to the queenside, and thus thwarts Ethereal's plans to attack on the queen side. And what Leela does is swap off into an endgame where black's king is so restrained by the pawns on h6 and on the king side that it can't get its king into the game quick enough, and Leela's much more active king is decisive.
Exactly. That's a great description. Let's have a look at the game. I'll just go back now. This was one of the crucial positions where white has played 9a3, but let's have a look how that game actually took place. So slightly d4 e6, but after e4 we're back into the French. d5 knight c3, knight f6, the Steinitz variation of the French. One of my favourites actually. I've played it a lot. f4, c5, knight f3. And now the normal move for black is is knight c6, but black players have also been experimenting quite a bit with well, all sorts of little wrinkles. I mean, you can go castle quickly, you can delay castling, you can play a6 and b5, and here black plays castles, queen d2, all standard white moves, and then this move b6. What's the idea of b6? Well, the idea, I suppose, is that if d takes c5, then black can take back with the b pawn on c5. So you know, that keeps some control of the centre. Well, I mean, this the fact that white can't play d takes c5, that well, that does restrict white's options an awful lot. Black might play bishop a6 to swap off the light squared bishops. This light squared bishop for black is nominally bad. Or black might just, you know, carry on with knight c6, bishop b7, rook c8, and maybe then later look to push a6 and b5. But in any case, keeping the tension like this and making sure that black can recapture with a b pawn towards the centre, that sort of helps to restrict white's options. And as Natasha said, it's in this position that Leela played the very mysterious move a3. Yeah, I do find it very hard to explain this move, why it's really needed at this precise moment. A3 is sometimes played in lines where black can still play queen b6, but obviously with a pawn on b6, well, the queen's not going to get to b6. It's also played sometimes to hold back, you know, b5 to b4 when black plays plans with a6 and b5 and b4. But well, black's played b6, so if black does play b5, it's not exactly going to be going quickly. So I don't really understand this move. I mean, if you want a waiting move, then I mean, h4 would seem to be you know, a very reasonable waiting move and very much in the Leela style. Actually, the Leela engine that was watching the game, it's running on slightly different hardware. It might be a slightly different net as well. Was looking at playing 9h4, you know, but our Leela played a3.
Maybe Leela's trying to pretend it's going to castle kingside.
Could be, could be. I mean, maybe it just wants to keep all of its options, you know, just there. The one thing that Leela didn't want to do was to castle queenside, and the reason for this is actually very important, and we're going to see this coming back again in the game. And well, how do we know what Leela wanted to do against castles? We know because in the reverse game, Ethereal against Leela, Ethereal played 9 castles, and Leela responded with this move c4. And this is a very typical idea in this line. The idea is that after white plays f5, Very obvious move, threatening e takes f5, knight takes d5. Black responds with b5. And with white's king castled on the queen side here, this attack is actually very dangerous. I mean, black's wasted a move with b6 to b5, so it's not quite as good as in other lines, but it is still very, very dangerous. If you ignore it, then the pawn's going to play b4 and then c4, c3. And if you take, I'll do something like queen b6 and knight c6. I'm not quite sure about the move order there, but we're going to come up with rook b8, and this pawn on b2 is very, very sensitive. Oh, good lord, bless you. So the game Ethereal Leela was pretty wild and pretty exciting. Carried on f6, takes bishop h6. Leela sacrificed the exchange to avoid any kingside problems. Takes, knight b5, knight c6. Knight c3, moving back to cover the e4 square. Rook b8, and well, Leela sacrificed just the exchange. Was the exchange down? But a lot of dangerous threats against the king. For example, bishop a3 is one idea. It was a crazy old game, and it eventually was drawn. You know, but really, really wild game there. That's why in any case why Leela wanted to delay queenside castling. It was nervous about black closing the queenside and starting a general pawn advance there. So after a3, knight c6, well, now Leela, I suppose, declared its intentions, kind of, played the pawn to h4. Funnily enough, just at this precise moment, it's actually a pawn sacrifice, because black could play this move and distract the white knight from the protection and played bishop takes h4. But Leela and also Stockfish actually are both very disdainful of this pawn grab, just saying bishop f2. I was looking actually at playing g3, looking for takes king d1 and playing queen d3, forking h7 and g3. Maybe quite dangerous as well. I think actually Stockfish was even Stockfish and Leela were also looking at this line and saying even with the two pawns gone, it's very, very dangerous for black. But you could,
a lot of open lines for those couple of pawns. You
can imagine, yeah. I mean, it's quite like an Alekin Chattard attack, if you know your classical French, where white gives up this rook's pawn, not for immediate mate, but just for long-term pressure against the h file and the h7 pawn. And well, since black's already castled there, it will be very dangerous. So Ethereal didn't do that. Ethereal played queen c7, and now Leela castled. So, yeah, I mean, the question that you have to ask yourself, and that's the first thing that occurred to me in the game, was why doesn't black play c4? Well, in actual fact, I suppose the moves that white's played, a3 and h4, are kind of more useful than certainly the move queen c7 that black's played, because obviously the queen would want to be, well, more on b6 on the b file rather than on the c file. And a3, well, in a way it's a weakness. You know, it gives black a little hook to open up the queen side, but it's actually, I suppose, more in this position. It restrains b5 to b4 more. You know, the knight, you can just take the pawn. The knight doesn't have to move away. And this move h4 has been incredibly useful because, well, in my engine games, white was playing this move bishop h6. Amazingly enough, I mean, I was spending some time looking at this line: f takes c6. Takes knight g5, which seemed the most natural way to me. If you go bishop g5, I go hg, and open h file looks great. But I found some nice lines actually. b4, knight e6, queen a5. So we're threatening b takes c3. A takes b. I might even have queen a1 check. So I was looking at this move: knight takes d5 for white. Queen takes d5 is possible, but then what was I worried about? Oh, knight c7 I was slightly worried about. And if this pawn on c4 is going to be hanging if you move the queen over to a5, which rather annoys things. And queen f7 I should have just e6. But black can play c3 in this position, and after knight takes c3. Just trying to break things up. B takes c3, I'll go queen c3. I've actually got the surprising move, b takes a3. And this is really dangerous, actually. I'm just threatening a takes b2. opening up the whole kingside. What were we trying? Something like knight f8, yeah, just a takes b2, and bishop a3 check is very, very strong. So I mean, there's plenty of complicated lines here for white and black, but you get the idea anyway of how dangerous this attack can be. Once you get a pawn to c3, obviously the queen on d2 is not very well placed from that point of view. But my engines weren't looking at that; they were looking at playing bishop h6. And the idea of this stunning move is that after g takes h6, you go queen h6, and well, you're ready for f6. You're also ready for knight g5. And if bishop g5, hg, and this rook on h3 is coming into play.
This attack goes very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, f6 was the mainline engines were trying, but then rook h3, and the rook comes around to g3. And, it's really a huge attack. And I think white was winning every single game in the engine games I played. Ethereal went a6, and white went bishop d3. And now this is kind of the last moment that black could play c4, but here after c4 we get a very typical move in this line.
Bishop takes h7 check.
That's the one. King takes, king g8, queen e2, threatening queen h5, g6, and I was looking at h5, but actually the engines you don't even need to bother. They thought just queen g4 or queen f3, and then you're going to play h5, and black is completely lost. Black's got no attack, and black finds it very hard to get any sort of number of pieces defending that king. So but it's very typical. We've seen this many times in this line of the French. So Ethereal played something a bit more sensible. Played c takes d4. Just dragging the knight away from g5, so making these sacks on h7 less effective, and b5. So, yeah, this is not so bad for black. I mean, black is a tempo down, I think, on normal Steinitz lines. So it's played b6 to b5. On the other hand, it does have that little hook on a3 to use to open up, the b file on the queen side. So it doesn't look all bad. Leela plays these types of positions very well. These white Frenches plays extremely well, and generally manages to combine quite nicely. Play on the queen side and on the king side. So played rook h3, which is always a good move in these lines. Can help to attack with rook g3, or can help to defend along the third rank.
It can swing across to the queen side.
Exactly, when required. So b4 from Ethereal, very natural, and h5. And white's idea now, having clamped down the black king side a little bit more, is to play rook g3, and then f5, and then queen h6. So those are the three moves that it's doing. Ethereal decided that a very useful thing to do was to play bishop c5. Just to remove this bishop on d4. When this bishop on d4 is removed, it gives black the possibility to a little bit more easily to play f6 or f5 to try and block up the king side a little bit, and also defend laterally along the second rank with a queen, for example, or even a rook. And here Leela kind of switches plans completely, actually, and starts trying to deal with all of black's play on the queen side. So it plays h6, closes up the king side now, but gets this long-term restriction of the king side of the king, and also this weakness on h7. Bishop e2, just to protect the bishop on d4, and also you'll notice freeing up the third rank. And after rook b8, it completes that by playing knight a2. And what's this move knight a2 doing? Well, actually it's white's covering a lot more queenside dark squares all of a sudden, covering b4, the queen's covering a5, and the rook is ready to swing over to c3, pinning the bishop to the queen. And it turns out that Ethereal moved back, rook c3, queen d8, queen e3, g4 first, a5 and queen e3. And it turns out that Well, Leela's again combining play. It's moving, just attacking with pawns now on the king side. That's all it's doing. This pawn and well, the G and F pawns, they're the ones that are going to do some damage at some stage. And it's using all of its pieces here to really restrict Black's attack. For example, the knight would normally just come to c5 and maybe come to e4 or to a4. You know, just a very natural attacking move. But Leela's restricting it completely. So it's actually quite hard for Black to get some attack going. I mean, the only thing I think you can really criticise Ethereal about is I really felt that Ethereal was doing an awful lot of work to try and keep this rook that's on, you know, this half-open file pointing towards the king. But I do feel actually that probably this rook is more dangerous than this rook on b8. I mean, after all, you know, White's got this bishop on d4 covering b2. It's not hard for White to parry threats against its queen side. So I did wonder whether the simplest move for Black would be to play not queen d8, but something like queen b7, rook b3, queen a8, to swap off those rooks, develop. And yeah, I mean, White is better. I mean, White's got definite room for expansion there on the king side with f5, but Black is still holding, and Black's position is surprisingly solid. I've played many of these lines, and not easy to put Black away.
I guess White could try and bring the other rook in now. And,
wouldn't surprise me. Yes, wouldn't surprise me if White also played rook d3 to c3. Indeed, that. But still, you know, I mean, I think it's that would have been a better way of playing. As you'll see, you know, Ethereal basically ends up with very passive pieces. So plays a4, and here Leela takes a very nice strategical decision. Bishop a7, rook a8, and bishop b5. So threatening bishop c6. You'll notice again how all these pieces, they're just stopping, you know, Black's knight from moving at all. And funnily enough, though, that's the piece that Leela exchanges, because it's a dark square defender. And Leela's now decided that, you know, time to use that dynamic advantage that it had, stopping Black's pieces from developing, and convert that into something static. And that static advantage, that's this very poor bishop on b7 and all the dark square weaknesses. So Black played bishop a6, knight b4, quite unexpected, but the knight emerges into play there. And here this was the move where, well, basically after this move, after Ethereal's next move, actually the evaluation of both engines kept on increasing and never really stopped. So probably this was, I suppose, well, at least a serious mistake. But on the other hand, it is hard to to really find what Black should really do here. I think it's probably maybe starting to get a little bit too late. I mean, Ethereal played rook e8, and then Leela was able to play knight c6. If queen c6, then bishop takes c7 is really not what Black wants. You know, to lose all of its dark square play. I mean, White's just going to get its queen in somehow and give mate. But if you don't get rid of this knight immediately, then well, it's just exerting enormous control over the Black queen side, and you know, Black's counterplay has basically stopped. Another possibility was to play bishop after knight b4 to play bishop b5, just to keep control of this c6 square. But again, in my engine games, this was happening. The exchange of queens was being forced. And this ending was very, very promising for White. There were some big scores made for White. Bishop's not great. The king's restricted. And this pawn, in fact, is a very big weakness. Very easy for White to attack it with a king and then start chasing away this bishop. It's a rather unpleasant ending for Black. Ethereal played rook e8, knight c6, bishop h4. And now this very clever move, bishop a3. You'll notice that the bishop is really cutting across here, and so really keeping this king in a box together with this pawn on h6. Also defends b2, which is, you know, pretty nice. That's stopping any counterplay. And after rook c8, I was actually expecting maybe White to try and play a move like queen b6. You know, just really try and keep this knight on c6 for as long as possible. But maybe, I don't know, maybe in this position black could just play bishop b7 and the knight has to go back anyway. Leela played knight d4, and well, this knight's gone quite a nice little tour: c3, a2, b4, c6, d4. But now that it's arrived there, it's supporting the f4 to f5 break, which is going to be very unpleasant for black. So rook c3.
This knight stays really good in the endgame.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great outpost for it, and yeah, just a strange roundabout route. But I mean, it supports f4 to f5, controls some light squares, stops bishop e2, light, for example. It's a really great piece.
Because the bishop was there a few moves ago, and that redeployed itself
To a3. Yeah, that's right.
The square to the knight.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever you look at a Leela game, you're always amazed really at the flexibility of the pieces. With you know, you just play over the course of the game, and you see how often it's swapped pieces around, you know, around different static outposts, and every time, you know, just seems to improve its position. You know, very impressive. Bishop e7, and now this move f5. Excellent move here. So in principle, white's probably just looking to go, well, either f takes e6 and then line up on the e-pawn, or even f6 and, you know, completely shut out the black king. So Ethereal didn't want to allow that, played this idea. E6, a nice little intermezzo, attacking the queen on d7. Takes, queen e7. And now a nice little move, b takes a3. Yeah, I mean, in a way, the white queen side is weakened, but we're only opening the b file, and well, this queen on c3 is covering any entry squares quite beautifully. And if you look at black, well, the king's very badly restricted now by these pawns on e6 and pawn on h6. So I mean, if white manages to get a rook to the f file or a queen to e5, for example, it's just going to be untenable. Well, black tried to create a little bit of confusion with the queen. Queen f3, rook e7, and then queen e3. And well, Leela's very happy to exchange off the queens now. And this ending is well, extremely difficult for black. I think presumably lost because the white king can get so active. It can come to b4, attack the pawn on a4, or it's got some very nice entry channels towards d6, for example. And whereas the black king, yeah, it's going to find it hard to get active. I mean, if it goes to e7, I can always play rook f3 to f7, for example, you know, and just move it away from there. So Ethereal played king f8, king c1, king e8, king d2, bishop a6, rook c3, a little bit of shuffling there. But the king comes round to e3, and now Leela's just aiming to put this king onto e5. And it's too late to stop it now. Rook b7, king f4, rook b1, king e5. If you try and stop it...
king is still on the back rank.
Exactly. If you try and stop it with king e7, then I've got knight c6 check. So, well, check. And this is really bad. Rook f3. Check, king c5, rook b7, king d6. Bishop a6 from Ethereal, a little bit more shuffling, and then finally Leela decides that actually this obvious move, which could have been played a while back anyway, knight c6 with e7, and rook f8 check is the threat. So Ethereal played rook d7, takes, rook f6. This is completely winning, but I think the end was quite thematic. Bishop e2, rook takes g6. And again, this pawn on h6, as so often you see in so many games, grandmaster games nowadays, you know, following the example of AlphaZero and Leela, and you know, computer games, the h6 pawn proves to be decisive. If black played hg, then h7 queens. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that game. I thought it was yeah, very, very nice. I thought the opening struggle around this, do you play c4, do you not play c4, very instructive, especially if you play this this system with white or black. Do watch out for this idea of castle c4, because there's a few lines where it just wins for black. So, you know, really dangerous. And yeah, I mean, I think the this whole idea of Leela at some stage switching plan, blocking up the king side, basically getting its long-term advantage, and then just trying to restrict black's pieces from moving into the queen side. Very, very interesting. And then I think this this follow-up where white suddenly converts all that dynamic advantage on the queen side, where you know, you've got more mobility, you're stopping the opponent's pieces from moving, converting that back into statics, and going for a bad black bishop, light squared bishop, this bad French bishop, and then invading on the dark squares. You know, it was very, very effective. And yeah, as Natasha pointed out, this lovely swapping of the guard. So, you know, bishop goes round to a3 and knight goes to d4. And, you know, very, very powerful play. Very nice play from Leela, I thought. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that game. Probably we've got one more game to look at from DivP. It's ended now. So Stockfish and Leela qualified. I was a little bit sad that Ali Stein didn't quite make it, because I thought Ali was playing really, really well. But well, we're going to see how it goes. Stockfish looking very strong, I have to say. Apparently they've in all the testing they've been doing, they've been gaining lots of extra elo with all their patches and everything. So it's ready, and well, it'll be intriguing to see whether Leela plays with the same net as it played in.
So it's playing this division with the same as last year.
Yeah, same net as in the Superfinal. So be interesting to see whether.
Sorry, Div 17. Div 17 was just a few months ago.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah. So, but yeah, the Stockfish devs have been really, really busy. But yeah, Leela's still playing with the old net. So it'll be interesting to see whether they come up with something new for the Superfinal. Might need it. Stockfish is looking very good, and apparently the openings for this Superfinal 18 will be very sharp. So could play in Stockfish's favour there. So really looking forward to that. But okay, anyway, thanks very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed,
time to subscribe.
Indeed. And otherwise, keep well, keep safe, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching.